$308,000 is what we pay for the 4 students to attend that school. Item 8, items for action. A, Board of Trustees. 1, consider approval of San Marcos CISD's mission statement and commitment. Item A2, consider approval of statutory resolution relating to Senate Bill 11 on daily prayer time. And this is where HR needs your guidance on what it is, the proposal you want us to put forth. If you want to, she'll take script notes so that we're not violating any vote. But we do have to have a resolution before March that's adopted by this board, one way or the other.
Are we providing feedback for that right now? I guess my interpretation, and I would love to hear insight and feedback from my colleagues, is it's my understanding as a school district, we already do a moment of silence when we do the pledges. And then in addition to that, we allow religious organizations, extracurriculars to meet also before and after school. So I do not personally support building in time for prayer during the academic school day.
I agree.
Ms. Munoz is taking notes of yours.
I don't have a different opinion. I mean, it wouldn't want to anywhere we put it, it's going to be a problem. And we already provide that time, so there's not a need.
I would agree with my colleagues that there's already time that's allotted, and adding it would be a disruption. So I wouldn't agree to move forward with that.
Okay, I think we have guidance on how we need to create the policy.
And we'll, Juan Cruz's office sent us, and so did TASB, some literature. So we'll make sure that we let TASB know our direction and then have that in your board book for review.
Ms. Halsey?
Yes.
Just as an addendum to that, if when staff brings this to us in the form of whatever resolution we have to vote on, if you could include information of, again, I can think of a number of instances where I've seen students with faculty sponsors participating in some type of spiritual organized activity, which I'm in support of. I'm trying to think of the one where they meet at the flagpole.
Meet at the pole.
Yeah, and so if you can bring those examples to us, just so that as we discuss this resolution in its entirety, we can kind of unpack once again that we do offer numerous opportunities for our students to exercise their religious beliefs. Wonderful, thank you.
I think it would also be helpful within the resolution to talk about the fact that not only that these exist, but that there is no coordinated time across the district or even a campus where it wouldn't be disruptive to either class time or athletics in the morning or after school. There's not a good time that wouldn't be disruptive to something.
All right. Item 8A3, consider approval of recommended policy language DGA local and FNA local to implement the daily period of prayer and reading of the Bible or other religious texts, which we just discussed. Item 8B, elections. 1, consider contract with Hays County for the purpose of election services. Item B2, consider resolution to participate in joint election to be held on May 2nd, 2026. Item B3, consider contract with Caldwell County for the purpose of election services and joint election. Item B4, consider contract with Guadalupe County for the purpose of election services. Item 8C, operations. Consider approval of the purchase of 10 buses from Longhorn Bus Sales, Rush Bus Sales, and Thomas Bus Sales, Texas, for the amount listed through the use of 2023 supplemental bond funds, and authorize the superintendent or his designee to execute the contract. So I believe this was put back on because you tabled it. And so we just...
Maybe if that language could be changed to maybe if that language could be changed in 8C to of up to 10 buses And then for up to 1.81, that would give us a little more flexibility to get something approved.
Got it.
Ms. Halsey? I had a question on the order of election and the contract with Hayes County. Just to show consistency, even though I'm no longer the District 1 trustee, I was just curious if we could get information on what the cost would be to have an east side polling location at the Broadway office, which has historically been a polling location. This could all very well be a moot point if 3 people file, we have 3 open seats, et cetera. But again, I would like to have that information at the upcoming board meeting. Thank you.
Item 9, closed session is authorized by Texas Government Code Section 551.071, 551.072, 551.076, and 551.087. A, deliberation regarding safety, security, including safety personnel systems, intruder audit reports, infrastructure, and/or devices. And we'll need to add the item that you and I talked about. In item 10, the board will reconvene in open session to take action if necessary on items disclosed. And that is all administration has, Madam President.
Thank you. Do the board members have any items? Go ahead, Mr. Eric.
Thank you, President Halsey. I am a glutton for punishment, so I would like the board at our February meeting to revisit the request from the city of San Marcos to waive our drainage fees that are levied by the city, and I can provide supplemental documentation in the form of that letter that we sent last year. I think there's been some changes on city council and within city leadership, so I want to take another whack at it to see if we can get that $400,000.
Okay, we'll add that as item 4 under items for action. Anything else? Anybody else? Seeing none, we will return to the regular agenda and go directly into the budget workshop.
Madam President, I think
we do request that the board approve 2 waiver days for low attendance from last week. We had 1 day was for Bowie, actually that was on Friday, January 23rd. They had an electrical power outage problem that resulted in their attendance being 66%. And then we had one on the day that we had the 2-hour delay for a couple of schools that were below the 10% lower than it was the previous year on that same day. So we'll be asking you all to approve the waiver so that we can submit that to the TEA.
we will list that on the agenda item.
All right. Okay, let's move forward with the budget agenda.
Okay, good afternoon, Board of Trustees and Dr. Cardona. We wanted to take some time to just touch on the process for the budget workshop. We've provided copies for each of you, as well as we have it posted as well on the screen. And we wanted to begin just to give clarification on how we receive and expend funds throughout the district. The goal here is just to give some context to our current status and help us when developing the budget for the 26-27 school year. So if you kind of look at the graphic on page 2, the 3 main buckets, obviously the local funds, state funding, and federal funding. Our local funds do come from taxes and tax levies. Currently receive tax levies from the 2023 bond as well as our Vader, in which we elected to use the remaining 2 golden pennies. We also receive our local property taxes, but these are factored into the state funding formulas, and they help us to determine how much money we're going to receive from local taxpayers, and then consequently how much we will receive in additional state aid. Generally, the more funding we have from taxes leads to less funding from the state. The state funding, and I know the question was asked last time about revenue, it is a complicated process and has several factors, but I think to simplify it, if we just look at some basic allotments, we have the per pupil basic allotment, that's $6,215. That was a change from House Bill 2. And the remaining Tier 1 and Tier 2 funds are dispersed into what we call the Foundation School Program, FSP, and the Available School Funds, which are ASF. The FSP is Texas's primary school finance system, and that's what balances the state and local funds, and it helps us to provide equitable educational funding based on student attendance and district property wealth. The Available School Fund is additional funding that's distributed on a per-student basis, and that's some funding that comes from things like the lottery. These two sources of funding consider factors which mainly involve total enrollment, enrollment in special programs, and then our average daily attendance. And then lastly, we have our federal funding. Those support programs such as our child nutrition and Head Start. And then we also have several sources of federal revenue, mainly our title funds and our IDEA B funds, as well as several other grants that we have applied and were awarded. Now, while the federal funds are specific awarded amounts, state funding doesn't exactly work that way. It's a prediction based throughout the year that uses both current data and previous year data. So that funding is driven by our average daily attendance, our weighted daily attendance, and then our property values throughout the district. So looking at the expenditures, we have several programs that exist in our district that our funds are directed to. We previously discussed that the personnel costs account for a little over 85% of our entire budget. So that means that we have to use a 15% to account for all these other items. But I just wanted to point out there are other costs within personnel that account for that 85%, and we've listed them there just so that you have an understanding of some of those additional personnel costs. Now, the additional 15% mainly goes to our operation and maintenance, and that accounts for both a variety of programs that are listed here, as well as the budgets that we have to allocate to the campus and the departments. And it just overall means we have to be very strategic in our approach to expending our funds. So we wanted to provide that bit of context moving forward.
Okay, so the second slide here is what I provided last month, and really what I wanted you to see here on these last two columns is how much has changed from 1 month to the next month. We've been working really closely with Moat Casey and with Omar, which was out of Region 13, and they have these complicated systems, Excel spreadsheets that try to duplicate what the summary of finance has, and summary of finance is ultimately what funds us. So they do have very complex mechanisms in there. So as we try to continue to do estimates, you can see here that from January and up through last week, when we received some additional runs, there was some changes in our tax rates based on the comptroller's numbers, based on the exemptions that were brought through for your homestead, your disability, and your over 65. So that made some changes. So if you can see here on that second arrow at the bottom, our revenue looks like it's going down. So I had originally had 91 million, and now we're at 89. However, again, remember we're funded on ADA. So depending if our ADA goes back up, it's like a scale. If one funding bucket goes down, the other funding bucket comes in and tries to fill that bucket for us. So if our tax collections are going down, then the state will come in later and refill what needs to be filled. The problem with that is they usually don't do that until September during settle up. So we'll receive that additional funding at that time. So that's one thing that I wanted you to be aware of. Because this could be changed again next month as we get additional ADA numbers in. So it's just going to be a constant swing. Another thing on that first arrow there on expenditures, on compensations, I'm really going through there, pulling our contracts, everything that we have in our system right now, and try to come up with a really good estimate on how much we would end the year in compensation. And I mean, it looks like we're really doing well. We are coming below of what we had originally budgeted for compensation. So I feel like at the end of the year, we will be at a better space in compensation, lower than what we had originally budgeted for. Also, on your other operating expenditures there, the 16 million, that's a little bit harder to estimate because there are things that come into play that we just don't know. Maybe there's a repair that has to be done, an emergency, I don't know, internet might go out, or we might need to buy something, a big ticket item. So that's hard to know where we're actually gonna lie at. However, previous years, we've never spent every single penny of it. So I do feel that we'll get some savings there as well. So that being said, we had talked prior, at the beginning of the year when we received the TRA funding for our teachers. And we did talk about what do we want to do, or can we do something for all of our other staff members. So this is one option. We thought of a one-time $1,000 payment for all employees that did not receive the TRA. So remember, TRA employees received either $2,500 or $1,000 depending on their years of experience. So currently we're looking at 742 people that did not receive an increase of that 25 or 5,000. So with $1,000, about $742,000. And this next screen just kind of puts that number into that compensation. And again, these are the estimates that we have right now. So we could land there. The bottom line could still change depending on other factors as we get more information into the templates. So that's all I have on that. And then we have Mr. Sandoval is going to talk a little bit about bond funds.
But before we leave this topic,
Yeah, go
President
ahead.
Halsey, the estimate ending is year 25, 26. That's what we're in, right?
Yes.
So you're still talking about changes to the budget we approved before?
The current budget, yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
we're not yet getting numbers on 26, 27?
Not yet. We do have a timeline here at the end of the presentation where we're
Okay.
starting those conversations for the current year. And those will be more directed towards the next coming year.
Because at least from where I sit, we already approved this budget. What it is what it is. I'm worried about what next year is going to look like and how early we're planning for that.
I think that's why we're having these conversations, so that when we get ready to start approving increases, that's when this comes into play. We see where we are now, and we can start looking towards next spring and what it's costing us. So that's why we're having these conversations, so that when we approve our budget, we're reasonable in our increases or expenditures. Because compensation is the majority of it. So I think we're being forewarned that this is where we are.
Right.
And then we need to look at it for next year. Although as much as all of us want to give raises and increases, we still have to keep in mind what's happening currently, 25, 26.
Ms. Halsey. Thank you, President Halsey. And if one of my colleagues wants to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I recall when we approved this budget, 25, 26, there was a lot of conversation around trying to get the Commissioner of Education to redo the hold harmless for us and the 5 other school districts, and also revisiting this current budget to, per staff's recommendation today, is to consider that one-time payout. Even with that information in hand, I do find it personally confusing, and it's my fault, no one else is, that the expectation is we're talking about 26, 27, but also trying to settle up on some previously mentioned hypothetical commitments of 25, 26. And so using that as like a reference point for me, I am supportive of the one-time payout. I know HR was reviewing, I know I'd asked at our last meeting to see what we are in relation to our neighboring school districts. Obviously, we need to stay competitive when it comes to teachers and making sure we retain those employees. I know several who have moved to Hayes, Comal, Dripping in the last several years, and I know it's in direct correlation to pay or lack thereof, and that's like a responsibility of mine to try and stay competitive within the parameters of our budget. And so I guess if staff is looking for direction, I am interested in moving forward with the one-time payout. Although we have not settled the issue with hold harmless at TEA, I just got to move forward, right? Like, I had frustrations that we waited this long, hoping that they were going to figure it out and fix it for us, and here we are. And I understand why the prerogative of the board was to wait and see, but here we are and no new information, right? So if staff is looking for, I guess, direction from us today, put my little chip in the, like, I want to see the one-time payout. I do have, I guess, some questions regarding the supplemental bond budget before, but I guess I had questions about 25-26, Mr. Sandoval. Are there maintenance and operational things that are happening where, like, we're replacing HVAC equipment with general fund this year? Like, are we, like, how do you make a distinction of, like, I'm going to replace this AC using general fund dollars, or do you not do that, or what does that philosophy look like?
We haven't done that. What happens if something goes down, then that does come from general funds, but we don't have a plan in place to replace any HVAC using general funds. Or, I mean, you can see the supplemental list right there. We have a couple of campuses on there because we know that's a need. Most of our work orders are generated from those 3 campuses when it comes to HVAC. So, okay, but there's nothing in the general funds, or has been since I've been in the city.
Okay, I was just curious about that. So, like, for this past year, nothing has broken down, no ACs have needed replacing,
There certainly has, but we have.
So, what do you do in that instance?
We take it from general funds.
Okay.
For the repair.
Okay, and then is there a way to provide that number for, like, 25-26 of how much of general fund you've had to use for these, like, catastrophic breakdowns where, I mean, I've been at elementary schools after the kids get out of recess, and, like, God help you if you don't have an AC working, right? And so I was just curious, like, do we have those kind of dollar amounts of what that looks like when general maintenance or replacement things come up?
We can get that.
Okay, thank you.
So I just want to clarify a couple things. Can you go back to the previous slide, please? So one, the teacher pay increases from the state. There's no expectation that there will be another increase that another $5,000 next year.
Yes, there should be another round, one more year that I know of, yes.
An additional increase, or just the
No,
funding
no,
for
just
the
another,
right,
yeah,
so
just funding for
right, I just
the
want to
same.
make sure that,
Yes.
that, like, in May, the state is not going to give
Another-
5-year teachers another $5,000. No, but they will give us
The 5,000
another year
too.
of funding to pay for the one from last year.
Correct.
Right, but there's nothing for next year. Okay. Then I want to make sure that when we do the budget workshop in March, that we have the next year's projections, whatever they are, even if they're estimates. I want to make sure that we're looking at that in tandem. And then, if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, if we get the hold harmless next year, if the TA commissioner revisits it in May because he thinks it counts for next year, not this year, and then would give it to us in September, that would be about $2 million, correct?
For this year, it would have been 2.8. For next year, 4 point something.
So in September, we could have a 4 something added to our 26-27 budget. If he does what he says that we've been told should happen and that he said he would do.
Yes, he has made comments about settling up now. Initially, September of October of last year, Now he's gonna settle up this year in September of October of next year.
Okay, and then my other thing I thought that I heard you say is that given that the estimate changed because of our tax issues between last month and this month, that come September, when they do a settle up, we should be back to the original revenue of 92,
So.
right?
No.
No.
So these numbers that TEA received are the values from the comptroller. So once we get our preliminary and our certified values, they go to the comptroller. And because of that House bill with the exemptions of the 140 and the 65, they have recalculated those numbers, sent them to TEA. So now they plug those numbers into the formulas. So it decreased our funding. So that's not going to change until next year when we get certified values for the current year, then it'll change again. What I was saying is we could receive additional funding based on ADA. So your ADA is going to affect also the numbers, which if we continue to have a higher ADA, we will get additional funding through the rest of the school year.
Right, because our budget was estimated on the ADA.
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
so we should
Get a little bump, yes.
get a little bump, and it should go back so that the deficit,
I would say, yeah, we're probably gonna get close to that 91. If not 91, we should get really close to that.
so we should still be looking at about $1 million deficit, not the 2.6. And then it's $1 million deficit, and then assuming that everything else holds the same for
Right.
next year, we'll probably be in around the same ballpark, and if we get the hold harmless back,
Then we
then the $1 million deficit turns into a almost
Positive.
$4 million
Yeah.
surplus, right?
Yes.
Am I doing the
If
math
that
right?
all falls
If
in
it all
line,
works the way
yes.
that it should work,
Right,
and there's
right.
nothing else crazy that happens, right?
Right.
Okay. So that is where I hope we end up, right? I think if we ended up in that place, that would be great for us, and it would be a significant departure from where we were this time last year,
Correct.
and give us a lot more leeway and opportunities. So with that said, I am probably going to come down on the side right now of not doing any mid-year increases, even though I know that's something that we had talked about. And probably when we get to reconciling the next year's budget, not do big increases until we know that we actually have the money. That's just where I'm thinking that I'm going, so my colleagues know. Any other questions?
I just wanted to clarify for myself. So we built the 25-26 budget. We passed it in June. It starts in July, but we based that on tax revenue from 2025, and then the situation changed. And that's how we always have to do it. But that's where this loss of funding is
Correct.
coming from because
Correct.
of that homestead exemption. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, so briefly, I think somebody had requested that in this workshop, we also provide you an update on the bond fund. So the items on the left is the estimated budget for the 2023 bond. The text pool account is the money that we have to spend, and then each of the projects are listed with the remaining balances as of January 9th. We did account for $4.7 million in arbitrage that we're holding back. So we're looking, as of January 9th, of a surplus of about $15 million from the 2023 bond after all the projects that we've committed to are complete. Now, this numbers also includes the construction projects, Mendez, the high school, the natatorium, the middle school. It also includes contingencies. It includes miscellaneous dollar amounts that we allocate for things that come up, and then also FF&E, your furnitures, fixtures, and equipment. So if we do a good job, then we probably could have addition to the 15 million, a little bit more than that. The items on the right are just very preliminary supplemental bond projects, working with principals, working with cabinet, working with others. We've identified projects around the district that we'd like to identify or that we'd like to eventually address. The buses, I've got additional information that I'm probably going to present at the regular board meeting on the buses. I know Anthony Shields, Director of Transportation, last school board meeting talked about the 3-point harnesses. But we have additional information that y'all need to consider because that is an agenda item that y'all would need to vote on. But it is allocating with the supplemental bond funds to purchase 20 buses. The playground PIP, just an explanation, that PIP just means pour in place. So basically it's looking at all of our elementary school playgrounds that currently do not have turf, which really our ADA students struggle to use those playgrounds. So that's repairing those or adding PIP surface to all of our elementary school playgrounds that do not have it. We'll make a comment about Bowie. You can see a $700,000 price tag on Bowie. That is just an estimate at this point. We do not have an issue with the foundation at Bowie. We have an issue with all of the soil that's in and around Bowie. We've got sidewalks that are cracking. We have ramps leading into the building that are dropping. So we've worked with the architect, we worked with the civil engineer to try to get that resolved. Any questions? Like I said, this is preliminary, and I would like to get further down with Mendez and the high school projects so we can understand in case anything comes up there. So I would probably project that in April or May, we would bring these lists to you like we did in 2017. We had some recommendations from our part on priorities, and then leave it up to y'all to tell us what you want to do with those excess funds.
Mr. McLaughlin?
So philosophically, I think this money should go back to the taxpayers. Because we said we're going to do this with your bond money. They paid money. We had a lot of extra. It isn't really our money. But setting aside that philosophical concern, because I may be the only one with that concern, is there a deadline for when this can be spent? Like, can we just keep their money until an HVAC breaks? Or does it have to be spent by a certain date?
It doesn't have to be sent by a certain date, but the longer that you keep it, the more arbitrage that accumulates. So right now we're at what, 4 million?
4.7 million.
Yes, so the longer you keep that interest money, you'll have to pay that back.
That's what we pay back. The interest that we earn.
Yeah, if we don't spend it all in a reasonable amount of time, because what they don't want is districts to get bond funds and then sit on it and accumulate all this interest. They want some of that money back. So you do have, there's not a set limit, but it's like a percentage that you have to spend within a certain amount of time. Or then we have to pay that back, arbitrage back.
Well, if this ever comes to us as an action item, if I could see that percent by date chart view, that would help me, because we always have unexpected things come up. This is very nice to have for those unexpected things if we're not going to pay it back to the taxpayer. And so I don't want to like spend it all in a moment, like, and be reaching for some things that maybe aren't necessary, and then later we're having to spend general fund money to do something we could have paid for out of this.
Okay. Mr. Adamo?
Thank you, President Halsey. There's a number of comments I want to make, so bear with me as I kind of jump around here. Just to understand the spreadsheet that I'm looking at, so the original natatorium budget of what we approved after value engineering, a lot of that out was 13.7 million, correct?
No.
That was the original budget?
No, the original budget for the natatorium was like 15.8 or 16.4, working off of memory right now. That was the balance at that time. That was what was left in the project at that time. So we still have $11,800,000 to spend on the natatorium.
Okay, so we're not like way under budget, gonna roll over a bunch of money. That's just what's left in the account to spend.
That's what we're projecting,
That's needed, okay. Yes. Well then, disregard all of that line of thought process. I agree with Mr. McLaughlin. I think once upon a time, when we did this during the last bond process, we had a pretty large chunk of change left over. And we did stuff at the CDC, we did stuff at a number of campuses. I guess for me, like the carpet in the counseling suite at San Marcos High School, even though it's $11,000, like unless there's some type of like black mold under that carpet or something that is like impacting the health and wellness of students, I'm gonna have to say like that's gonna be like something that we defer, right? If HVACs are breaking down, and like it's really hot or really cold inside of an elementary school, I want to fix that. And so President Halsey, I don't know what the prerogative of the board is or you independently, but I would really much like to have like a workshop around supplemental bond funds and understanding what these projects are and how time sensitive they are, just because like it's a lot of money, and like Mr. McLaughlin said, it was tasked with doing one thing and now we're asking to do it with another. So I just want to have some more information on each of these items.
Ms. Kane, did you?
Yes. Mine's just a question. Is this in order of importance? Is this prioritized on this list right now?
No, not at all.
Okay,
It's very,
that's some-
like I said, it's very preliminary, and we would expect that in April or May, we would come back and just give you our recommendations. You know, it's my responsibility to bring you all of the needs in the district, right? It's y'all's responsibility to tell us where to spend it. So that's what we're doing. That's what we did in 2017 bond. So we're going to follow that unless we're directed otherwise.
I would like to see, kind of along these same lines, if we're going to be spending this on something we didn't ask for, I'd like to see the prioritization and some rationale for each one of those things.
Ms. Cantu?
I just wanted to go back.
Microphone?
I just wanted to go back to talking about that interest that we earned. How firm are there? Is there any appeals? Is there any way to get part of the interest earned? Or you just has to be sent to them, they see it and they have to have it?
Well, it just depends on, so currently right now, so for instance, we just did an arbitrage calculation, last week or something. And so right now it's calculated at about $4 million. However, if we went next month and spent every dime, then we wouldn't have to pay that arbitrage back. So it just depends on how long you're keeping hold of that interest
So
in a
there-
bank, and that you're just, accumulating those fundings.
So there's a time limit?
Yes, but I can't tell you exactly what the time limit is, because it depends on how much the money is and how much you're getting in interest. So it is another calculation that has to be done to determine exactly how much you could keep or how much you would have to pay back.
Denise, can you explain to the public who is being paid back? Who's the who? The state
So we
or
would
the
have to pay back
taxpayers?
we would have to pay back the state.
So the state takes the money, it doesn't
Yes.
go back to the taxpayers?
No.
Which is a question then I have. So if we decided not to spend this $15 million surplus and return it to the taxpayers, how would that work?
I don't think that we can give it
Can we send
back
people
to-
checks?
The only way that we could do
I mean,
that
we pay
really
down-
is
we
to
pay
pay
down
it
the
back. We
bond
have to pay down the,
indebtedness,
yeah, we'd
right?
have to do it
It's not a-
defeasance.
But didn't they change the defeasance laws?
They did. So I don't know if the limit or the expiration already changed on that, but it is pretty soon where it's gonna be harder to do that.
Can you find out about that? And
Yes,
I
ma'am.
agree with, I'd like to see the same chart that Mr. McLaughlin would like to see about the priorities and also, or the priorities that Ms. Kane identified, and then how the interest repayments work. But I also will say that I don't have an appetite for going out for another bond anytime soon unless there's really extenuating circumstances. I don't have an appetite for taking out the copper pennies, which we got a presentation on, at all. So I feel like we did this bond in good faith, and as long as the projects are necessary and that they relate back to the original bond that we went out for, then I would be fine with looking at them in a priority. But I want to make sure that they do tie back to the bond that we set out, right, appropriately. Just because I don't think that we're going to be going out for more funding. So we should use this in the best way that we can. Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you, Ms. Halsey. Although I disagree with a couple of those statements, I will say, I guess I have additional questions. And again, in whatever format this information can be presented, I would appreciate it. I guess I'd want to understand also like the 2.1 million in technology. Like, is that to replace Chromebooks? Is that internet infrastructure? And I don't need that information right now. I would really like to see it like in an enumerated list to understand that better. And the only reason why I say that, and not to get into two of the like weeds and minutia of the selling of bonds, I know we sell bonds at different times. They have a length in which we accumulate interest and debt. And so I guess my concern is, am I using like a 30-year bond, which is like for an elementary school, because that's the life of the campus? Am I using those kinds of bond indebtedness dollars to buy Chromebooks or internet technology, right? Like, is the debt that I pay on it going to be longer than the life of the technology that I'm purchasing? And again, I don't need to like unpack all of that and look through all the layers of that onion right now. But as I look at some of these priority bond projects, I guess what information would empower me is like the stuff that we're using for buses, the debt that we're paying on that is going to last the life of the bus, right? Or the debt that we are paying on the technology is not going to outlast the life of said technology that we buy. So when this list comes back to us as we're working through that, if you can show me that I'm not essentially going to be paying on my credit card for 10 years for like a pizza that I'm ordering tonight for dinner, like that's going to help me ultimately make that decision, right? So, thank you.
Thank you.
In regard to the natatorium budget, from the onset, it was, alarming to us to have to build this budget in a budget crisis. But we've leaned on 3 school districts: Eanes, Alamo Heights, and Southwest ISD. Eanes has, 1 high school town. Alamo Heights 1, and Southwest has 2. Denise has provided a really good framework for Nan and I to start building this budget. But as we're talking to these natatorium directors and athletic directors at these schools, the natatorium, if in this, on that slide, if you start from top to bottom, if you prioritize the high margin opportunities in a natatorium, it'll pay for itself and then some. Obviously, it's going to take us some time to get it to that point, but in 1A to 2 is where you're going to make your money. And I'll just use one example of one of those natatoriums last year, established, obviously, grossed $912,000, and the expense was $495,000. So there was a $400,000 profit, and it's in the club. I mean, I've lived in the volleyball club world. Y'all do some baseball, basketball. Those people get rich off clubs, and we got to get a swim club in that natatorium, and then the events that swim club brings in is where the big piece of your revenue is. There's others, which I think are great community relations, because I keep getting told, we're going to do swimming lessons. Those are all great, and they're going to be good for our community, but they're pennies on a dollar to pay for the operation of that natatorium. And a good snapshot of what these clubs and these events do. This weekend, we hosted a 7-on-7 tournament, no electricity, just grass, with a group called Premier Events USA. They showed up with a check for $10,000 that Bernie gets, and then our booster clubs, not Bernie, our school district gets, but Crystal is the one that picked it up. And our booster clubs made $7,000. So there's after we pay our custodian, there was a $15,000 gain to our school district just in one Saturday on grass. So when you turn that into swimming events and swim clubs, and then reaching out to our community and working with the San Marcos Activity Center and physical therapies, it will end up paying for itself. But that's where our thoughts are. We're moving that direction. It's not going to pay for itself immediately, but I think over about a 3-year period, that thing should be paying for itself.
And last meeting we had, it was requested about just some kind of timeline, so we wanted to provide you, just as we're going through our budget planning season, kind of here's are some big items that we're looking at. Obviously, we passed January. February is important for us as the transfer window is going to close. We'll be able to finalize those enrollment numbers, and that allows both business finance and HR to kind of begin making progress with projections for the coming year. In which case, in March, we will be able to provide and sit down with campuses and talk about budget allocations and staffing allocations, and obviously get some feedback from those teams as to what their needs are. And then hopefully we can take that information, put it all together, and then in April, we're looking at getting some kind of salary schedule and compensation plan over to the board for some initial feedback. April is also an important time because that's when we will get our preliminary CAD values. So we'll have a much better idea of the revenue that's coming in from our property taxes. And then in May, when we move forward, that's where we'll be able to provide you, I think, a more approximate updated revenue projection. And then we will have a finalized, based on board feedback, compensation and budget plan, hopefully for you guys to approve. And that'll allow us in June to begin moving forward where we transfer into our new system. And then we do receive that, or have that budget, and we just begin planning for the 26-27 school year. So we wanted to provide that to you just so you understand some of the big things that we're looking at.
I think we'll need to add to the April meeting the review of the supplemental bond projects so that if we decide to move forward with any of those, they could get started over the summer.
Okay.
Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you, President Halsey. I think I have a question for our Human Resources Department, just as they have to shuffle their stuff. I guess I had a question specifically more at the middle school and high school level. What threshold has to be met for a class to make? Like, hypothetically, I'm just going to make up a class like underwater basket weaving, right? Like, is it 6 students? Is it 8 students? Is it 15? At what point does like an extracurricular reach the threshold in which we're like, we are going to allocate an FTE their work time as a contracted employee to then make said extracurricular or even like academic class? Is there a threshold for that, or how does that work?
So our process last year that we worked really closely with our academics team and with all of the secondary principals was having a caseload of 145 to 155 per sections, and then with all of their enrollment. And that made a class. And so that FTE would have a whole caseload. Right now, I know our counseling team is looking at course tallies. Those went out last week and coming out and still returning. So we will have a meeting with our academics teams, and we will ask, okay, what do your course tallies look like? How many sections will that create, and does that provide an FTE? We wouldn't want to have a full FTE and not have a caseload of at least the 6 courses with planning periods that they would teach.
Okay, and pardon, because obviously you're like not speaking my language, so I'm trying to like keep up with you, right? But it's fine, it's not your fault, it's mine. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is like every section of a course or every extracurricular, it's not just based on that one class, it's based on like whether or not that FTE can have like 144 kids across their schedule. Is that correct?
Yes, we try to staff according to those formulas and ensure that their certifications, they can pick up those course loads, and most teachers have their certification and then they teach an extracurricular. So we try to staff according to that formula.
And I guess this isn't just for extracurriculars. I guess let me like broaden the scope of my question. So like if I were going to ask for like a census on enrollment of like each class offered at San Marcos High School, there wouldn't be any classes that have like 6 kids in them in any given period.
So we would not staff that way.
Okay.
No, when we give our staffing allocation to the principal, it is with a caseload of 145 to 155.
But that's not 155 kids in one class. It's across like a section of classes.
All their sections.
So, but I guess what I'm asking for is like in a specific period, there wouldn't ever be an instance in which there's like 6 kids or 8 kids or 10 kids, and we say like that builds a class for that one period. I get that.
Correct.
When we do like averages and divide by the number of sections, it gets you like 144.
No, we do not staff that way to have 6 kids in a class.
Okay.
But we do have these one-offs like AP Music Theory. They'll have 1 or 2 kids, but they're stacked on classes. You know, like for your AP courses, generally like 15 kids, but your Art 4, Art 5, AP Art portfolio, they're stacked with the, so it is possible you would see AP Music Theory, one kid, but that kid's built
In a
in.
class with 30
Correct.
other kids.
Correct.
So, I mean, I would be very interested in, I guess, like seeing that information as well. Well, I guess I'm just like fishing for efficiency, right? And historically, and as a board member who has, I think, voted for every budget the last 11 years I've been up here, we have been very generous with building classes, building extracurriculars. If any student had any kind of bunny trail they wanted to chase down for some type of enrichment, we've said like, hey, fund it, put the staff member there. And I think that's great, and I would want to continue that. But if I am now deferring pay increases for staff another year, then like the gravy train is over, right? So even like I want to look at efficiencies within extracurriculars, within academic programming. Like if, so I'd be interested in having that information as well.
So just to close out, we wanted to ask if there were any agenda items that we needed to get added for our February board meeting, or there were any specific priority areas that you would like us to begin focusing on as we move forward with our planning. And I guess to even be more specific with this, the one-time option here, if this is something that you would even like us to put on the board agenda for February or not.
Personally, I'm not interested in reviewing it in February, but I don't know where my colleagues are.
We know about it, so we have a means to put it on the agenda through the board president. If 2 people or 3 people want to see it, I don't think I need it to come from the administration.
And I'm sorry, what is the specific ask again? Just budget-related agenda items?
Yeah, if there was anything more specific, we just want to make sure as we're working on building our budget and the staffing. I know we've heard a lot of the feedback that you've received already, but there was anything specific that was missed that we want to make sure that we pay attention to and try and bring back to the board for future budget.
I do have an item, again, and just because this was based on conversation that we had earlier this year, I would like an up or down vote on the one-time payment to staff. Again, that commitment on postponing was, we're gonna revisit this in the spring. We're in the spring, and although numbers haven't changed, it's still pretty static to the information we had then. And the rationale was like, let's wait and see. We've waited, we've seen, and so now let's go on the record, let's vote it up or down, and yeah. So
if you want it voted down, we could put it on February, but to me it's changed because we lost 1.9 million. And so they're saying, oh, that may come back, that number is changing. I might have an appetite to support the proposal once that money comes back, but if you make me vote now, I can't vote for it.
Yeah, no, I understand, and I guess that's, as have been here when we delayed it again, like, if we vote it down because there's no new money, we've actually lost money, then I understand that rationale too.
When we put it on in March, then at least it sounded like we might have some clarity. You'll still get your vote. I mean, I'll be the second for your agenda item. I just think if we put it on in 2 weeks, we just know how it's gonna go.
I mean, do we think from staff that there will be additional information for that vote? And I mean, again, this was something that we had committed to revisiting in the spring. Again, I don't think the information has been positive, but then again, I just want to go to staff and say, hey, like there was a decision to take no action, or we just don't have the money, or whatever that looks like. Because I can like anecdotally provide my interpretation of what happened, but again, I'm just one board member. So
In March, by the March board meeting, we will have completed, correct me if I'm wrong, the fourth 6 weeks. So we would be able to do an additional revenue projection run and provide an updated number to show if that's moved in any direction.
then I can wait till March then for that vote.
It's just mainly that big gap. You know, it's gone from 91.9 in revenue to 89.1. So that's a $2.8 million drop. We're not closing that with ADA. We're gonna have to get back something from what the state is harming us with when we were supposed to be held harmless, really, to make that number go. But okay, March, if he says.
Well, and I guess my philosophy or my understanding was even back in the fall was this was always going to be a withdrawal from fund balance. That money was never going to materialize. And I think that has proven to that point, and I agree, I don't think we're gonna make it up with ADA or some recalculation. I'm just trying to do something, so, anyway.
Also, aren't we hoping on a ADA increase that we talked about in the budget? If our ADA goes up, we get a little extra money and that might fill the gap a little bit.
So
Mr. McGolden?
If you haven't addressed it.
the only question that Denise and I wanted to start planning for March is if there was any priorities or perspective as far as compensation increases, if you wanted us to maybe just have a 1% that we work with our third-party vendor to start preparing, because that's when we would show you our market analysis in the March workshop.
I mean, I'm happy to see things if my colleagues would like to see them, but like I said, personally where I am is I need to know that we are getting the money from the state before I commit any more money. And if we do get the money that we should be getting, then I'm interested in doing as sizable of increase as possible. But until then, I'd be sort of holding the line on keeping the benefits in place, but not expending funds that we don't know that we are going to have yet, because I don't want to go through any more cutbacks.
Yeah, and I guess from my perspective, I would like this revenue nailed down more. I mean, it's our budget, it's our money, but I've gotten, not really faulting anyone individually. I know sometimes it sounds like I am when I say things like this, but I'm not. But as a policymaker, I get a different view on revenue every month. And if that was designed to confuse me and make it hard for me to make decisions, it'd be very effective. I don't think it's by design. I think it's accidental, but it still means we can't make the best decisions for our staff, or we make promises we don't cash later, or commitments that we might do something that we don't cash later, because it's always a moving target. I just can't. Maybe that's the environment you're in, but I would like to find some way out of that environment. Like, for instance, we knew that there were increases in the homestead exemption and 65-year-old caps. Like, we should have been able to calculate what impact that was going to have for us before we were told it by by the tax assessor. You know, I think, like, and I know that's what you're using Mo Casey for. I don't want to tell y'all how to get your information, but I just need better, more accurate and consistent information on revenues to do anything. And I'm sure y'all are trying, but that's me expressing my frustration. I have one specific thing though. I think that after last year's experience where we didn't do a reduction in force, but we did eliminate some positions, and the administration and the board wasn't a part. I was part of the very tail end of that, but worked very hard to get that done. But it has created a sense of temporariness among some of our faculty. Like, well, will my position be here next year, because they just went through that experience of finding out in June, oh, okay, I'm good. So I think, like, I saw the staffing levels to be finalized in April. To me, that's if that could be any earlier, that'd be great, because then people know. They might not know, am I going to get $1,000 raise? But they'll know, oh, I'm going to have a position to return to. And I think the sooner we can communicate that to our faculty, the fairer it is to them.
Just an update on that, we will have allocations to our principals before spring break, so
Okay.
March.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all very much. If there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion made and seconded. All in favor, please raise your hand. Thanks, everybody, and thanks for all of your good work during all of this cold weather. We appreciate it.